In a world filled with endless conversations, constant notifications, and an overflow of voices trying to be heard, silence often speaks with a depth that words can never reach. Presence is not about what is said, but about the quality of attention one brings into a moment. When you are fully present, without distraction, without agenda, your very being radiates a form of communication that no speech can replicate. Words can be misunderstood, twisted, or forgotten. Presence, however, imprints itself beyond memory into the essence of experience. It is the way the body feels calm when another person is grounded. It is the way a quiet gaze can comfort more than 1,000 reassurances. Presence over words is a reminder that energy always travels further than sound. When a person speaks without presence, the words fall empty. They might be eloquent, they might be impressive, but they do not carry life within them. Presence is the current that gives power to words. Without it, speech is merely noise. With it, even a single sentence has the ability to transform, to heal, to awaken. This is why masters of wisdom often choose silence over speech or minimal words over endless explanations, because their presence carries the teaching more strongly than their vocabulary ever could. In stillness, their being becomes the lesson. Presence is a discipline. It is not something stumbled upon randomly, though there may be moments where life forces you into it. To cultivate presence requires awareness of the body, the breath, and the wandering of the mind. The mind wants to jump ahead into what must be done or replay what has already been said. The body wants to react to impulses, to move in distraction. But when both are anchored into this very moment, something extraordinary happens. You become aware of reality as it is, not filtered through stories or judgments. Presence is the key to experiencing life directly, not as a thought, not as an interpretation, but as raw truth. In relationships, presence creates bonds that words cannot establish. You can tell someone you care about them, but if your attention is fragmented, your words lose meaning. When your presence is complete, without needing to prove, explain, or persuade, the other person feels your truth without question. This is why sitting quietly beside someone can bring more comfort than filling the silence with endless talking. It is not what is spoken, but the energy of being fully there that nurtures connection. Presence is not passive. It is not the absence of thought or action. It is an active engagement with life without resistance, without escape. It requires courage to be here, now, without needing to hide in distractions or explanations. Words often become a shield, a way to cover discomfort or to create distance. Presence strips away that shield, leaving only what is real. This can be uncomfortable because it forces honesty, but it is also liberating because nothing needs to be hidden. The power of presence extends into self-mastery. To be present with your own emotions without labeling them, to sit with your own thoughts without being pulled away by them, is to reclaim inner authority. Anger, sadness, fear, they intensify when ignored or denied. But when presence meets them, they dissolve in their own time, no longer fed by avoidance. Presence is the flame that burns away the weight of unacknowledged feelings. Words often try to explain emotions, to justify or defend them, but presence simply allows them to be, and in being they transform. Presence sharpens perception. When you are fully here, details appear that were always hidden by the noise of distraction. The texture of the air, the rhythm of breath, the subtle expression on another's face, the silence between sounds. These are not captured when the mind is busy rehearsing words or preparing responses. In presence, life reveals itself in ways language cannot contain. Words can describe the surface, but presence immerses you into the depth. Even in teaching, the greatest lessons are often transmitted through presence. A master may demonstrate a movement or simply sit in silence, and the student learns more from the energy than from the explanation. This is why some truths cannot be written, cannot be spoken, because they belong to direct experience. Presence becomes the transmission, the invisible thread that awakens recognition in another without needing verbal confirmation. In moments of stillness, presence transforms not only relationships, not only self-awareness, but the very field around you. The room feels different when someone rooted in presence enters it. There is a calmness, a grounding and invisible strength that requires no introduction. It is felt instantly. This kind of presence cannot be faked, because it is not about appearances, but about the depth of inner stillness carried outward. Presence is power because it cannot be argued with. Words can be debated, opposed, or denied. Presence simply is. It leaves no room for debate because it does not rely on agreement. It is not about convincing, but about being. It does not demand recognition, yet it is recognized naturally. This is the paradox of presence. It is quiet, yet unshakably loud. It is invisible, yet it transforms everything it touches. To live with presence is to embody truth without needing to speak it. It is to allow your actions, your silence, and your attention to carry the weight of communication that words alone can never deliver. It is not that words are unimportant, but without presence, they lack substance. When presence is there, words become unnecessary, and when words are spoken, they carry the resonance of authenticity that can be felt far beyond the limits of sound. Respect and trust are not just virtues we practice with others. They are inner states of being that determine the quality of every relationship we have, including the one we hold with ourselves. To understand respect and trust is to understand the foundation upon which human connection, harmony, and growth are built. Without them, words become hollow, actions lose meaning, and bonds weaken. With them, even silence can communicate profoundly, and even the smallest gesture can hold weight. Respect begins with recognition. The recognition that every being carries within them a unique experience, a perspective shaped by countless moments of joy, suffering, triumph, and defeat. When we respect another, we acknowledge that their path is different from ours, yet equally valid. Respect does not require agreement, nor does it demand that we see the world the same way. Rather, it is the willingness to give space for another's truth to exist alongside our own. This is not weakness, it is strength, for to respect is to step out of the confines of ego and expand into something larger than the self. Trust, on the other hand, is the invisible thread that binds individuals, communities, and even nations together. It is fragile yet powerful. It takes time to cultivate, but it can be lost in an instant. Trust is not built through promises, it is built through consistency. The small actions repeated over time, the honesty shown even in uncomfortable moments, the reliability demonstrated when no one is watching. These form the essence of trust. It is not given freely without reason, but once earned, it becomes a source of security and strength for all relationships. There is a deep connection between respect and trust. One cannot exist in its purest form without the other. Respect without trust can feel superficial, a mask of politeness that lacks depth. Trust without respect is dangerous, for it places faith in someone or something without recognizing its boundaries and limits. Together, they form balance. Together, they create a space where individuals can grow, communicate, and build something that lasts. Respect also extends inward. Many people speak of self-respect as though it were only about protecting one's boundaries or refusing to be treated poorly. While this is part of it, true self-respect runs deeper. It means honoring your own journey, acknowledging your own worth without needing validation from the outside world. It means treating yourself with the same patience, compassion, and understanding that you would offer to someone you deeply value. Without self-respect, the respect shown to others becomes fragile, often tinged with resentment or insecurity. A person who does not honor themselves will struggle to genuinely honor another. The same is true for trust. Before one can trust others fully, one must learn to trust oneself. To trust oneself is to believe in one's ability to face life as it comes, to rely on one's inner strength even when external circumstances shift unpredictably. It does not mean certainty in every action, but rather confidence that no matter the outcome, you will be able to learn, adapt, and grow. When self-trust is absent, doubt fills every interaction. Promises from others are questioned endlessly, even when genuine. Opportunities are avoided, not because they are impossible, but because the individual does not trust themselves to rise to the challenge. When respect and trust exist together in relationships, something profound happens. Communication becomes more open, misunderstandings are resolved without hostility, and space is created for growth on both sides. There is less need for control because both individuals recognize the dignity of the other and believe in their integrity. Conflicts still arise, but they are approached not as battles to be won, but as challenges to be understood. The energy shifts from defensiveness to cooperation. What might have broken a weak bond only strengthens one built on mutual respect and trust. In society, the presence or absence of respect and trust determines the stability of communities. A society without respect falls into division and fragmentation, as people see only differences rather than shared humanity. A society without trust collapses into suspicion and fear, where every action is doubted and progress is hindered by the inability to cooperate. History shows us again and again that civilizations thrive not merely on resources or power, but on the trust and respect cultivated among their people. Even in the smallest circles, such as families or friendships, respect and trust define the atmosphere. A family where respect is absent may outwardly appear connected, but inwardly suffers from unspoken wounds and resentment. A friendship without trust becomes shallow, incapable of withstanding the tests of time. But where both are present, love deepens, bonds endure, and challenges become stepping stones rather than stumbling blocks. Respect and trust must be practiced daily. They are not concepts to be admired from afar, but disciplines to be embodied in every interaction. They require awareness of how words are spoken, how actions align with intentions, how silence is held. Respect is shown in listening without interruption, in recognizing the dignity of another even in disagreement. Trust is built in following through on commitments, in speaking truth even when difficult, in standing firm when it would be easier to retreat. The journey of respect and trust is continuous. There will be moments where they are tested, moments where they falter, moments where mistakes are made. Yet each test is also an opportunity to strengthen the foundation, to correct what has been broken, to rebuild with greater wisdom. For respect and trust are not fixed states but living forces, growing or diminishing based on how they are tended. Struggle is one of the most universal parts of human experience. No matter how different people may be, each person will at some point meet obstacles, doubts, pain, or challenges that feel overwhelming. Struggle does not discriminate. It visits the strong and the weak, the young and the old, the confident and the insecure. It is in these moments that encouragement becomes more than kind words. It becomes a light that cuts through the weight of darkness. To receive encouragement during struggle is to be reminded that no matter how deep the valley may seem, there is a way forward. And to give encouragement is to offer someone else the strength they may not yet see within themselves. When a person is caught in the middle of struggle, their perspective begins to shrink. The mind often magnifies the weight of the difficulty, and the heart begins to doubt its ability to carry on. A small problem can feel enormous, and a temporary setback can feel permanent. But encouragement has the power to widen perspective again. It is like opening a window in a suffocating room. Suddenly, the air feels lighter, the burden less crushing, and the possibility of another day more real. Encouragement works not by removing the struggle, but by reminding the one struggling that they are not alone in the storm. Struggle is not merely a punishment or a burden, it is also a teacher. In the pressure of difficulty, a person begins to see the depth of their own character. It is only when tested that patience shows its strength, only when challenged that resilience is discovered, only when pushed to the edge that courage reveals itself. Encouragement is the gentle voice that says, "Do not fear the test. The fire is shaping you, not destroying you." Without encouragement, the struggle feels like an endless weight. With encouragement, the same struggle transforms into a path of growth. There are times when struggle feels silent, when no one around seems to understand the weight being carried. In those moments, even a small word of support has the power to change the direction of a day. A kind reminder, a thoughtful gesture, a recognition of effort. These are not small things. They can be the reason a person chooses to take one more step instead of giving up. Struggle is heavy, but encouragement is light. And when light enters darkness, it always expands, always pushes back, always creates space for hope. It is important to understand that encouragement is not about pretending everything is perfect. True encouragement does not ignore reality. Instead, it faces the reality of the struggle and still insists that movement is possible. It acknowledges the pain without becoming consumed by it. It reminds the struggler that strength is not the absence of hardship, but the ability to continue despite hardship. To encourage is not to say, "There is no mountain," but to say, "The mountain is steep, but you can climb it." During struggle, the mind often tells stories of limitation. It whispers that you are not capable, that you will not endure, that others are stronger, that failure is inevitable. Encouragement interrupts that voice. It offers a new story, one that says you are capable, that endurance is possible, that strength can be built, and that every step forward is progress. It does not eliminate the inner critic, but drowns it out with reminders of resilience. Encouragement is not a denial of weakness, but a recognition of potential. Struggle is a process, not an event. It unfolds in cycles of doubt and strength, of weariness and renewal. Encouragement must also be continuous, arriving again and again like breath itself. A single word of encouragement may carry someone through a moment, but repeated encouragement becomes a rhythm that carries them through an entire season of difficulty. Just as water must continue to flow to sustain life, encouragement must continue to flow to sustain perseverance. Sometimes encouragement during struggle comes from others. At other times, it must come from within. The ability to encourage oneself is one of the most powerful skills a person can develop. To sit in silence and remind oneself of previous battles that were endured, to recall the times when strength was hidden but still found, to say inwardly, "I can keep going." This is a form of self-encouragement that builds inner power. The world outside may not always provide words of support, but the world inside can always create them. Encouragement is both external and internal, both given and received. Encouragement does not remove the weight of the struggle, but it changes the way the weight is carried. It transforms trembling steps into steady ones, hopeless moments into hopeful ones, despair into determination. It is not magic, but it feels magical because it alters perception, and perception is what shapes the experience of reality. Struggle is heavy, but it is never absolute. Encouragement is proof that there is always something greater within the human spirit than the obstacles faced. In a world that is constantly rushing toward outcomes, achievements, and results, the essence of effort often gets overshadowed by the final destination. Yet the journey is never separate from the result. The quality of the outcome is always rooted in the quality of the effort. To appreciate effort is to understand that every drop of sweat, every moment of discomfort, every pause of uncertainty is not wasted. It is shaping the foundation of who you are becoming. Effort carries energy, and energy carries transformation. Effort is more than physical action. It is the invisible commitment of the mind, the resilience of the heart, and the strength of the spirit. When someone dedicates themselves to something, whether it is learning a new skill, facing personal struggles, or simply showing up with discipline each day, what they are doing is investing their most precious resource, their life energy. Too often, effort is overlooked because results take the spotlight. We clap when someone wins, we admire when someone succeeds, but how often do we truly acknowledge the 1,000 unseen steps that led there? To appreciate effort is to look deeper, to recognize that greatness is not an accident, but the product of countless invisible moments. There is power in effort even when the outcome is not what we hoped for. Many times in life, we place value only on success, forgetting that not all effort leads to visible triumphs. But effort is never wasted. Every time you try, you carve a path within yourself. You train the mind to persist, you strengthen the body to endure, and you teach the spirit to rise again after every fall. If results do not come today, the seeds planted by effort remain beneath the surface, waiting for the right conditions to grow. To see effort in this way is to free yourself from the narrowness of only valuing victory. When you begin to appreciate effort, you shift the way you see yourself and others. Instead of harsh self-criticism when things don't work out, you recognize the bravery in trying, the courage in showing up, the resilience in continuing. You start to see others not by where they stand, but by how much they give, how much they try, how deeply they commit. This perspective softens judgment and cultivates compassion. A child struggling to learn is not failing. They are investing effort, and that deserves appreciation. An athlete who doesn't win still carries effort that can never be taken away. A person healing from pain, moving slowly step by step, embodies effort that often goes unseen. Appreciation of effort allows us to honor the invisible battles people fight daily. Effort is also the bridge between intention and reality. It is not enough to desire change. Effort is what transforms thought into action. Many people dream, but few commit. Many speak, but few follow through. To appreciate effort is to value the bridge itself, not just the land it leads to. Because without the bridge, without the daily discipline and willingness to endure, no dream ever materializes. The process of effort is itself a form of manifestation. Every repeated action, no matter how small, is energy being poured into reality. There is a quiet dignity in effort that is often overlooked because it does not seek attention. True effort is not loud, it is steady. It is the countless hours of practice when no one is watching, the persistence to rise again after being knocked down, the humility to continue even when recognition is absent. This silent strength is what builds character. It is not about how much you achieve in front of others, but how much you are willing to invest when no one applauds. The world often misunderstands effort because it glorifies outcomes. But in truth, outcomes are fleeting. The deeper value lies in the unshakable foundation effort builds within you. Effort teaches patience. You cannot rush growth and you cannot force outcomes. The seed planted in the soil will not grow faster simply because you demand it. It requires care, persistence, and trust in time. In the same way, effort teaches you to surrender the illusion of control over results and instead focus on what is within your reach, your actions, your discipline, your consistency. This shift frees you from anxiety about the future because you understand that your role is not to control the harvest, but to tend the field with effort each day. To appreciate effort is also to embrace imperfection, because effort is rarely flawless. It is messy, it involves mistakes, it often means stumbling and rising again. Yet within this imperfection lies the raw beauty of being human. When effort is recognized, it validates the process rather than demanding perfection. It says, "Oh, I see how much you gave. I see how hard you tried." And in that acknowledgement, people feel encouraged to continue, to not give up, to believe that their energy matters. Appreciation of effort becomes fuel for resilience, for without recognition, even the strongest spirit can grow weary. When effort is valued, it transforms environments. A family that appreciates effort nurtures confidence in children. A workplace that recognizes effort creates loyalty and motivation in its people. A society that honors effort builds a culture where people are not only judged by their wins, but respected for their striving. In such an environment, failure is not feared, because effort is never wasted. Growth is encouraged because every attempt is seen as progress. Appreciating effort is a way of honoring life itself. Life is never static. It is constant movement, constant striving, constant unfolding. To see effort is to witness this unfolding and recognize that within it lies the sacred act of becoming. Every moment of effort is a step in that becoming, no matter how small or unnoticed it may seem. And when you appreciate it, you learn to see not just the surface of life, but the depth beneath it, where effort flows silently, shaping everything that is yet to come. When we reflect deeply on the meaning of space and freedom, we begin to see that these two elements are not only external conditions, but also inner qualities that determine the way we experience life. Space is not just a physical gap between objects, nor is freedom simply the absence of restrictions. Together, they point toward an inner landscape that allows the human being to breathe, to grow, and to move without resistance. Without space, there is no room for expansion, and without freedom, there is no possibility of unfolding into one's true nature. Space is the ground from which freedom arises. Consider the breath. If there is no space in the lungs, no openness in the chest, then air cannot flow. Breath becomes shallow, restricted, and life feels suffocated. The same is true for the mind. When thoughts fill every corner of our awareness, leaving no stillness, the mind has no space. In such a condition, freedom cannot exist because the person is trapped in a continuous cycle of reaction. Space, therefore, is not only an external allowance but an internal condition of spaciousness, where silence exists, where clarity arises, and where the possibility of choice becomes visible. Freedom is the movement that emerges when space is present. Imagine a bird confined within a cage. Its wings may be strong, its feathers radiant, but without the open sky, the bird can never express its full being. The same principle applies to the human spirit. When the conditions of life create constant confinement, whether by external limitations or internal fears, freedom is denied, and with it the ability to live authentically. But when there is space, physical, emotional, mental, the individual finds the courage to move, to express, to transform. Freedom is not only about breaking boundaries, but about entering a state where movement is unhindered, where one can respond instead of react, and where one's actions are guided by clarity instead of compulsion. The lack of space often comes from attachment. People hold on to objects, roles, beliefs, and identities as though their survival depends on them. But the more one holds on, the less space there is. The mind becomes cluttered with the past, with expectations of the future, with anxieties and fears. When there is no inner space, freedom feels distant. Letting go is, therefore, a practice of creating space. by releasing what is unnecessary, what is outdated, what is no longer aligned. One clears the inner chamber so that freedom can naturally enter. The paradox is that freedom is not something that can be forced. It appears when there is room for it to flow. In the training of the body, one sees how space and freedom interact. A body that is tense, rigid, and tight cannot move fluidly. There is no freedom in its motion. But when the body is stretched, opened, and relaxed, space is created in the muscles, the joints, the tendons. Within that openness, movement flows like water. Freedom expresses itself through space. The same happens in the emotional field. When emotions are suppressed, buried, or denied, the inner space contracts. The person feels heavy, locked, unable to breathe freely. But when emotions are acknowledged, observed, and allowed to move through, space opens again, and with it comes a sense of freedom. Space is also about perspective. When you are too close to a situation, your vision is narrow. You see only a fragment of the whole. Step back, create distance, and suddenly a wider view emerges. That distance is a form of space, and with it, freedom from the immediate weight of the problem. Freedom does not always mean changing the outer conditions. Often it arises from creating space between yourself and the experience, so you can see more clearly, so you can act from awareness rather than being consumed by the situation. Freedom without space easily becomes chaotic. If one attempts to move without openness, the result is struggle and conflict. Space without freedom becomes stagnation, a hollow emptiness without expression. The two must coexist. Space invites freedom, and freedom animates space. Together, they form a dynamic balance, like the inhale and exhale of breathing, like the silence and sound in music. Neither can be complete without the other. To cultivate space, one must practice stillness. Stillness in the body, stillness in the mind, stillness in the breath. This does not mean doing nothing, but rather creating a pause in the continuous noise of existence. In that pause, space is revealed. Once space appears, freedom naturally arises, for now there is room to choose, to act, to move. To cultivate freedom, one must practice awareness. Awareness of choices, awareness of thoughts, awareness of emotions. Through awareness, one breaks free from unconscious habits and reactions, stepping into a more deliberate, conscious way of being. Space and freedom are also the foundations of creativity. A mind filled with noise has no room for inspiration. A life filled with restrictions leaves no energy for expression. But when the mind is spacious, ideas can flow. When the being is free, expression becomes natural. Creativity is the meeting point where space and freedom dance together. It is in this state that one begins to align with the deeper currents of life, moving not from force but from flow. Without space and freedom, the human being shrinks. Life becomes small, repetitive, heavy. With space and freedom, life expands, possibilities open, and the self begins to unfold in directions previously unseen. It is in this unfolding that the essence of transformation resides, because transformation requires both the openness of space and the courage of freedom. Space allows the new to enter, freedom allows the old to leave, and between the two arises the continual process of becoming. Consistency is often overlooked in a world that glorifies sudden breakthroughs, overnight successes, and dramatic transformations. Yet, when you look closely at the foundation of anything lasting, whether it is physical strength, mental clarity, emotional balance, or spiritual depth, you will always find consistency at its core. It is not the intensity of one great action that shapes a life, but the quiet repetition of simple actions performed over time. Consistency is what molds discipline into habit, habit into character, and character into destiny. Without it, even the greatest vision collapses like a structure built on sand, but with it, even the smallest steps accumulate into a force capable of reshaping everything. The power of consistency lies in its invisibility. It is not dramatic, it does not draw attention, and it rarely gives immediate satisfaction. It asks for patience, a kind of faith that understands results are not always visible, but are always being built beneath the surface. Think of water dropping steadily on stone. One drop does nothing, 10 drops make no mark, but 10,000 drops carve a path that even the hardest rock cannot resist. Consistency does not demand perfection, only persistence. It is not about how much you do at once, but about showing up again and again until the action becomes as natural as breathing. When actions are repeated with intention, they create rhythm, and rhythm is what life responds to. The body, for example, thrives on rhythm, consistent sleep, consistent nourishment, consistent movement. The mind, too, Find stability when you consistently feed it with constructive thoughts rather than chaotic impulses. Even relationships are strengthened not by grand gestures done once a year, but by small, consistent acts of presence, honesty, and care. In every domain, the principle is the same. Consistency sustains growth, while inconsistency erodes it. But consistency should not be confused with rigid repetition. It is not about forcing the same action without awareness. True consistency requires consciousness. If a farmer plants seeds daily but never waters them, his consistency is empty. The essence of consistency lies in aligned actions that are repeated with awareness of their purpose. It is better to take one small step in the right direction each day than to run 1,000 steps in confusion and collapse. Consistency does not mean doing everything. It means doing the essential things steadily without abandoning them halfway. There is also a hidden discipline in consistency. The discipline of choosing long-term fulfillment over short-term distraction. Every day offers the temptation to abandon what matters for what feels urgent, to chase novelty instead of nurturing continuity. But those who understand the weight of consistency resist this pull. They know that real transformation happens not through intensity, but through stability. To sit in meditation daily, even if the mind is restless, is to cultivate strength. To train the body daily, even if the progress is small, is to build resilience. To practice kindness daily, even if unnoticed, is to strengthen the fabric of one's character. These are not dramatic acts, yet their cumulative effect is profound. The difficulty lies in the fact that consistency demands humility. It asks you to value the ordinary, to repeat the same practice, to trust the process without demanding immediate rewards. The ego resists this because the ego thrives on the extraordinary, on the applause that comes with big moments. But the truth is that greatness is built in silence, in the unglamorous hours of consistent effort when no one is watching. The glow of a strong mind or a disciplined body is not the result of a single effort, but of countless unseen acts of consistency layered over time. Consistency also acts as a mirror, revealing who you truly are. Anyone can act with focus for a short period of time, but only consistency shows whether that focus has become part of your nature. It is easy to speak of values, but it is consistency of action that proves whether those values are truly lived. To say one seeks peace, but to feed daily on noise and chaos is inconsistency. To say one seeks strength, but to abandon discipline is inconsistency. True alignment is shown not in words, but in the consistency of deeds. There is wisdom in understanding that consistency is less about speed and more about direction. Progress built on consistency is slower, but it is steadier and deeper. Like the roots of a tree that grow unseen, consistency builds strength beneath the surface until the day comes when the tree can withstand any storm. Those who rely on bursts of effort without consistency are like trees with shallow roots. They may rise quickly, but they fall just as easily. Those who embrace consistency endure. It is also important to recognize that consistency is not simply about external action, but also about internal state. To consistently return to calmness when disturbed, to consistently return to awareness when distracted, to consistently return to discipline when tempted. This is what sharpens inner power. It is not that disturbance, distraction, or temptation will disappear, but that consistency of return will transform the way you engage with them. Consistency frees you from the tyranny of chance. Without it, your life depends on moods, on circumstances, on fleeting motivation. With it, you no longer wait for the right mood to act, you act and the mood adjusts to your action. Consistency is what allows discipline to survive in the absence of inspiration. It is the bridge between intention and realization, between who you are and who you wish to become. It teaches that progress is not measured by how intensely you burn, but by how steadily you endure.